If I asked you what would the name of this buddy picture be, I came up with Trump and Mamdani, the early years. Okay.
I, I
No.
I thought the brave and the bold, but I think you know what might sell is Mr. Clean and Timu Zoran. And I thought that might work as well, with you being Mr. Clean and I'll be your sidekick. We're live.
We are live. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our nightly community meeting. I see all of our Kathleen Zaya in the house. That's my team justice chief of staff. I'm always happy to have her with us. I'm going to give you all a minute or so to jump on, and then we're going to jump in with my friend Wajahat Ali. I'm so excited. Many of you asked, can you please invite Waj? Ask and you shall receive. He's here. We're going to tell a couple of stories from how we met. I'm even going to show you a picture and I'm going to ask you to caption it. Maybe you can send me, if this were a buddy movie, what would it be titled? I'll flash that picture in a minute. I have my own take on what I think the buddy movie should be called. All right. It looks like we're reaching center mass. So let's count it down. I will forego the roll call tonight because of our guest, but we'll have a roll call again tomorrow night. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to our nightly community meeting. As you all know, a couple of weeks ago, I asked you, who would you like me to invite on? Because you got to get tired of hearing Glenn talk all night, every night. And you were very polite about it. You didn't cop to getting tired of me, but Waj's name came up. And I'm sure many of you are already subscribed to Wajahat Ali. The Left Hook is the name of his, what is it, a Substack page, a Substack account, a Substack platform. I don't know what we even call it here on Substack, but The Left Hook. And I'm going to explain to you why you're going to want to click over and subscribe to Waj, but you're going to come to realize it as we talk today. So let me tell you a little bit about Waj. First of all, thank you for jumping on with us. And now I'm going to give you a formal introduction. All right.
Let's do it, man. It's exciting.
All right. So Waj, among other things, is a recovering attorney, as so many of us are. He is an author of a great book. Listen to this title: Go Back to Where You Came From, and Other Helpful Recommendations on How to Become American. I love that. And he's got so many blurbs and testimonials from really remarkable people. It's a book. Oh, and I see it. It's over your, what is that? Your right shoulder there. Highly recommend it. Great stocking stuffer. So Waj is an author, and you can see his work in the Daily Beast, the New York Times, and the Atlantic, and the Washington Post, which used to be a respectable publication. You see him on TV all the time. He is a brilliant, stone cold, brilliant political commentator, analyst, pundit, and he will make you think and he will make you laugh all at the same time. I'm going to flash this picture because I want to talk about how Waj and I met. We're going to do a little reminiscing here. So here is a picture of Waj and I on a train trip. Yeah, we were vacationing together. It was lovely. No, so what we would do is we would often go from Washington, D.C. to New York up to 30 Rockefeller Center for the weekends, and we would go on a show that no longer exists, unfortunately, because it was wonderful. It was Up with David Gura, and I think that's where I first met Waj. And one of the unique things about that show was four people would sit around a round table with David, the anchor, and we got to sit there for pretty much the whole show. And
Yep.
we all got to weigh in on the issues of the day. Now, I'm just a legal analyst, right? I'm no political pundit. I didn't know what half of the other people were talking about, but I got to weigh in with kind of my layman's take on whatever the issues of the day were, including political issues. So it was great fun. It's where I made friendships with folks like Waj, my dear friend Pete Dominic, and so many, Danielle Moody, so many others. That's where we had our start. So if I asked you what would the name of this buddy picture be, I came up with Trump and Mamdani, the early years. Okay.
I I
No.
I thought the brave and the bold, but I think you know what might sell is Mr. Clean and Timu Zoran. And I thought that might work as well with you being Mr. Clean and I'll be your sidekick. You go bash heads and I clean it up later. But I want people who don't know, Glenn and I were coming back that trip, and we were on the same Amtrak, and we used to go up early in the morning, and we used to have our donuts. And I used to have half a donut because I'm a Pakistani middle-aged man, and unlike Glenn, I don't box and don't have excellent athletic tendencies like my wife. And I remember on that particular train back, if you recall, Glenn, I was like, man, I got two kids. My wife's pregnant. I'm exhausted. I keep coming up every weekend. They really like me. Then CNN invites me. What do I do? And I remember you had just signed an MSNBC contract, if I recall, and you gave me fantastic advice on how to work both sides. And then you actually connected me with another person who had a contract. And then you gave me this fantastic strategy of how to do the morning shows on CNN, but the evening shows on MSNBC, and how the producers then from both would like be like, hey, wasn't he on our show on in the morning? And then I did that strategy. And a little while after that strategy, CNN then invited me. So I always thank Glenn for going out of the way to be helpful because most people, as you know, they're jerks. They're very territorial. They're very selfish, and they're like, I got in. Let me raise the ladder and not help this other guy. But you were very, very open, and also with that fantastic introduction. If I wasn't married, I could have easily scored 2 dates. So thank you with that. And with that photo, I was telling you, my wife just saw that photo 5 minutes ago, and she goes. I'm like, look at me. I was skinny once. I had hair. She goes, I like your face now. It's better. But get back to that body. That body was better. So that was like a kiss to the face and a left hook to the body by the wife. Just keeping me humble, Glenn.
That's a mixed bag. She gives you a little something and then she pulls it right back. You know,
I'm like,
that's
she's like, I like the face, but the body, eh.
but
I'm like, well
yeah.
done. Well played, wife. Well played.
All right. So Wash, first of all, let's reminisce a little bit. Tell me about, what was your favorite part of the whole Up with David Gura when we would be at 30 Rock? It was kind of the heyday for at least us. Of course, now they are no longer in 30 Rockefeller Center. They moved over to Times Square. I've heard from my friends and colleagues it's not quite the same.
Nope.
Hopefully, MS Now will remain a going concern and it will take off. But just talk a little bit about your time kind of going up there, being on MS, being on CNN.
So I think you and me, it's a very similar story. Is that MS was super early, Dave Gura super sharp, and they had to bring people, right? So like, who the hell would come like at 7 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday and Sunday? And the people that they got were really sharp, smart people who later on became superstars. For example, Katie Fang. That's where I met her for the first time. And Katie and I used to meet in the green room because right after we were done with our panel, Katie was coming on all the way from Miami for the early morning, like legal eagle analyst position, right? But she was unpaid, you were unpaid, I was unpaid. And the best thing about Up with David Gura is, like you said, we had an entire hour. So an entire hour, four people. They used to put these really delicious, fattening donuts, and we always tried to resist them. And at the end, we all broke down. David was very generous. Every single person got there, if you will, like at least 10 minutes if you added up all the time, right? So for many of us, it was like, oh, we're good at this. We're building up our reps. We're getting our clips. We get to know each other. You meet people, and a lot of the folks that were there were, if I will, it was almost like minor league, right? Because they used to put the big names on the evening shows, right? But I think we were like the scrappy underdogs who knew our stuff, and we got in there. We got our reps like almost like rookies, if you will, and that helped us, if you will, develop our skills, develop our confidence, build out our network, and then more and more, like people saw you there, MSNBC saw you there, and like this guy Glenn, he should have, I think, his own show. Katie, she should have her own show. And then I was able to use that experience. Man, we went back and forth for like 6 months. Can you imagine? I used to go up early in the morning, come back with a red eye because I had young kids, and my wife's like, if it's good for your career, do it. I did it for 6 months, Glenn, to the point where my wife is like, if they're still not going to hire you, what's the point? And literally, the way the world works out is I was done. And then right when I was done, if you recall, the Christchurch massacre happened, and Brenton Tarrant did a video of himself going into two mosques in New Zealand, killing 50 Muslims. I was waiting. I was up late at night, Glenn, and this is why being prepared and working hard. and being lucky, I was up late at night. It was 2 a.m. And I just, having tracked right wing extremists, Islamophobes, hate mongers, I'm like, seeing what I see right now, seeing his video, seeing, the replacement theory, I can track this. I think I know what's happening. I waited until I got confirmation. Finally, I remember the New Zealand news service confirmed what I thought. I did a 10-point Twitter thread, Glenn. I didn't even use a hashtag. I go to sleep. 5 hours later, Jim Shudo calls me. I'm like, how did you get my number? He goes, watch, come on my show in 2 hours. I'm like, it's 8 a.m. I'm exhausted. Just please, come on. I go to CNN, do a 5-minute interview with Jim Shudo. I finish it. Jim Shudo runs out, says, man, you made me look so good.
Mm.
Who was the guy who was Zucker? Zucker was running it. He goes, Zucker on their morning call, Glenn, said, this guy, Warbalat Ali, did you see his 10-point Twitter thread? He's great. Let's get him on CNN. And Jim was like, I already booked him. So based off of that, then I got a call from MSNBC right after. Then I go over to MSNBC. I go back to CNN. I go back to MSNBC. I go back to NPR. I have to go to New York that day. I go to New York. I land. Don Lemon calls me, says, come on my late show in the studio. So I literally land at Amtrak at 9:38. They have a taxi send my family to the hotel. I run to Don Lemon's studio, put the makeup on, do Don Lemon. And then for the next 2 days in New York, I'm there for a meeting for 2 days. I run back and forth and do MSNBC and CNN. And on Monday, the week before, CNN said, you know what? You're really good. Keep trying. That same lady who now runs MSNBC calls me frantically and says, how come you're not picking up the phone? We want you. Zucker wants you. Sign the contract. So there you go.
It's beautiful. And, my story has sort of a similar trajectory because I started going on MSNBC literally the day after I retired from the Department of Justice.
I
Full
remember.
disclosure, my brother-in-law worked for MSNBC, still does since they began in Secaucus, New Jersey in the mid 90s. So he said all along, look, I can introduce you to people, but I can't put you on TV. I'm just a writer and a producer. So I talked my way onto TV. Literally the day after I retired, MS put me on a train from Union Station up to Penn Station, then 30 Rock. They put me on air 9 times in 3 days. Man, that was some white knuckle shit because I'm like, I know I can talk to a jury, but I don't know if I can talk on TV. I'm a gutter kid from Jersey. What right do I have talking on TV?
Right.
And then, like you said, I went on for free for a couple of months doing tons and tons of appearances. And then I'm like, well, it wouldn't be bad getting paid for this, right? So that's when behind the scenes, some of the MS people themselves said, Glenn, go on CNN.
Yeah.
And I went on CNN and I started to get some attention over there. And the minute MS saw that I was on CNN, they said, put him on an exclusive contract. And for 6.5 years, I was exclusive to MSNBC until I decided to walk away. I asked to be released from my contract because I decided I no longer wanted to be part of corporate media, legacy media. I want to be 100% independent, just like Jim Acosta is now, and Don Lemon and Joy Reid and you and me and so many others, because independent media is the wave of the present. It's not the wave of the future. We're giving it in real time to the folks with no corporate sponsorship, no editors telling us the do's and don'ts, be on our P's and Q's. And I think, we have seen an explosion in independent media. And I think, it is needed now more than ever. So here's what I want to do, Wash. Usually I just ask guests, what is top of mind for you right now? It can be legal, it can be political, it can be international, it could be military, it could be whatever. What's top of mind? What are your main concerns at the moment?
Oh, several, Glenn. First and foremost, I feel like it's the world's worst I told you so because I've been trying my best ever since they invited me on CNN, BBC, and MSNBC. And I was talking to our good friend Pete Dominic. He invited me on yesterday. And I was telling people, we were sharing stories, right? And I remember it was 2016 leading up to the election, and BBC NewsHour invited me. Big show in England, right? Everyone watches it. And I remember it was like a pro-Trumper versus me. And I remember I said, Trump represents the death rattle of white supremacy that has become a death march. And you should have seen the face of the BBC host. He was like, white supremacy? What? Huh? Like, it's almost, it rattled him. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I believe he's a white supremacist president. I believe this is the death rattle and they're playing for all the marbles. And this is like, I didn't use the word white lash that Van Jones used, but I said this is the death rattle of white supremacy. And you could tell that he had never even processed it. And I remember that many of our colleagues, not all, but many of our colleagues played what I call taboo. They refused to call it racism. They said, racial trip up, racial flare up, economic anxiety. And I said, yes, that is part of it. But the main reason, as shown repeatedly by every study that's been done for the past 10 years, it's cultural anxiety. These folks are playing for all the marbles. Trust me, I've been following Stephen Miller's career. I've been following Steve Bannon. I know their endgame. It is a white nationalist endgame. Racism is the spine of it, right? And so now you fast forward 10 years, Glenn, and you and me are old enough to remember. I have the gray hair, you have the no hair, because you have the shiny dome that I respect. God gave you the shiny Jean-Luc Picard dome, which I wish I had. So I'm just now graying at the sides and thinning out. But, we remember when there used to be performative niceties. We remember when there was at least an attempt at if you will, massaging it and giving it a dog whistle. And now you're seeing no dog whistle. I mean, I remember 2 years ago on Twitter, Glenn, I said, folks, by 2024, 2025, white supremacist slogans will be mainstream. And people said, Wad, you're crazy. And I remember in 2019, I said, Donald Trump isn't leaving. They said, Wad, you're crazy. And I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the president and future of the GOP. And they said, Wad, you're crazy. And now, Glenn, as of literally this week, the term remigrate, which was only found, Glenn, in neo-Nazi white supremacist circles, it's a synonym for ethnic cleansing, is being tweeted out by the Department of Homeland Security and from top down the entirety of the right-wing ecosystem. He was dying, falling asleep as Marco Rubio was talking about him, and then he woke up. He's like, "What? I hate Somalis, garbage people." Went back to sleep. Right? This type of egregious racism is so egregious that even the New York Times, that played taboo, said, "Yeah, this is xenophobia." So number one, top of mind is as Donald Trump is fading, literally in life, as his agenda is failing, as the corruption is overflowing, as these negative double digits, Glenn, on the economy, on Epstein, on immigration, as people are just disgusted by this cruelty, they're going back to the one play that they know: egregious racism, white nationalism, white supremacy. That's top of mind. The second thing that's top of mind is because I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about this corrupt Supreme Court. And I think it's time to expand the court, reform the court, literally threaten them. Because in the absence of any accountability, they're telling you they don't care. And similarly to these people, like the right wing, the Trump administration, who no longer even doing dog whistles, this Supreme Court, in its shameful decision that allowed, the unitary executive theory, just making up shit from, pardon my language, whole cloth, allowing Donald Trump to just fire people at will from independent agencies, that absolute immunity case from a year and a half ago, birthright citizenship case, being against affirmative action, but then allowing affirmative action for ICE, the executive docket, which is being used for a rubber stamp. These two things are top of mind right now because even the Supreme Court, Glenn, as you've read, they're not even using intellectual arguments. They're just like putting it out there. And the third thing I would say is the broligarchy. And you said AI. Going back full circle, and I'll end it on this third one. What's top of mind is that these people are the most unhinged psychopaths that we've seen. I'm sure you saw that, like, alleged cocaine appearance of Alex Karp, the head of Palantir, literally creating a surveillance state, folks. Palantir, surveillance state. Check it out. You saw Sam Altman on Jimmy Fallon yesterday just saying absurd things about AI. Elon Musk just flipping out over white replacement and birth rates. Peter Thiel, the broligarchy drinking all of our milkshake, super pumping AI, and everyone who I've talked to, who I trust, is like, this is like potentially the 2000 crisis, or God forbid, the 2008 crisis, but dumber. And if AI is successful, Glenn, that means all of these workers, not just, low-level workers, but a lot of mid-level, entry-level workers, that's gone. Those jobs are forever gone. So that means the rich get richer. Think about the economic collapse. But if AI fails, think about how much we have invested in this failed venture. And if it goes pop, you and I and everyone else will have to bail them out. So those are the three things top of mind right now. How about you?
Well, Wash, thank goodness we're going to end, not yet, but we're going to end on where do you find your hope and optimism? Because, I think you just brought us all down appropriately. So
No, I'll give you hope.
no. Here's what, no, I know we're going to get there, but here's what I want to know, because you said that you predicted, I think you said you were on the BBC at the time, that Donald Trump represented, the death rattle of white supremacy, right? What year was that you said that?
Leading him right up to the election. So probably 2016.
So I know a little something about death rattles because for 22 of my 30 years as a federal prosecutor, I was the homicide prosecutor in DC. I was the chief of homicide responsible for all murder cases in DC. I saw more people literally die on video. The one good thing about the proliferation of cameras in urban areas, whether they're crime cameras, private ring door cameras, business surveillance cameras, it caught a lot of crime, including a lot of murders in DC. And you would see people die. You would see the death rattle, what we call agonal breathing, which is when the body, usually the brain is shutting down, but the body strives to continue to live. And all of these videos, unfortunately, still live in the back of my head.
Mm.
But a death rattle connotes death is near. But look at what happened on the white supremacy front. It may have looked like the death rattle, but that means death is near. And white supremacy seems to be winning the day in so many ways. So, in your assessment, Waj, what the hell accounts for that?
So the death rattle, I said the death rattle has transformed into a death march. And
Okay.
meaning that they realize, oh, we don't have the numbers. And as such, they're battening down the hatches, doubling down. Hence, end birthright citizenship. Uh, take away legal citizenship, denaturalize people, right? Deport even legal citizens, right? Destroy DEI. It's like the analogy I've given is if it comes between sharing a big mansion with me and you, or burning down the house, they have chosen to burn down the village, both here and in Europe. And the Death March is ultimately a loser's endgame. It's a loser's narrative. And why is that, Glenn? Because first and foremost, there's no such thing as a master race. We're all just people. It's just melanin. Race is a social construct. Number two, suppose you want to repopulate white people. All right, look how stupid this is. The Irish weren't considered white in this country. Italians weren't considered white. Poles weren't considered white. Germans aren't considered white. So what do you mean? It's all nonsense. But suppose you are successful and you kick out all black people, brown people, Asian people, biracial people, and those who aren't white. What will happen to America, Glenn? Just think about it. What will happen to America the next day?
It'll collapse.
Collapse. It's over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it is ultimately a self-destructive losing narrative by losers with a losing endgame. And so I believe instead of tasting the rainbow, instead of expanding themselves, instead of stretching themselves, look what they've chosen to do. Ban books, right? Look what they've chosen to do. Destroy affirmative action. Washington Post report just came out that by destroying affirmative action colleges, who did it hurt? White men. Going after Medicare. Who's it going to hurt? Rural communities, right? The greatest wealth transfer in history is going to happen thanks to the billionaire bill. Rich will get richer, poor will get poorer. Rural community hospitals will close. Rural nursing homes will close. Putting up these people with their eugenics policies, what's going to happen? You've seen measles spike, bird flu's coming. It's already killed someone. You're seeing polio come, right? You're seeing America literally being rejected by the world. Now Canada is going to China. Europe's going to China. We did our trade war to make America great again. Soy farmers are literally suicidal. Trump yesterday just bailed them out for $12 billion. That's like an arsonist burning down the house, then taking a cup of water, throwing it on the kitchen and say, praise me, I'm your fireman. So this is the death rattle turning into the death march. And the good news is, this is the one thing that's positive. This was their play going against Somalis, Afghans, Muslims. It's the worst, Glenn. I've been following this and researching this for 20 years. This is the ugliest I have seen it in my life, Glenn. And I survived and you survived the war on terror and Barack Obama and the anti-Sharia bullshit, right? This is the most naked and shameless I have ever seen it.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a rejection in real time. A poll came out a couple of days ago that said a majority of Americans find this distasteful. And you're seeing them just today, the good news, Eileen Higgins wins mayor of Miami. Folks who don't know, Eileen Higgins is like Shane a Latina, Shane Cuban. She's like this nice middle-aged blonde white woman, a Democrat. That's what's so important. A city-elected former county commissioner who won today, the first Democrat to win Miami in 28 years. She won 59%. Mamdani, they threw everything and a Bill Clinton and the bus at Mamdani. He wins by nearly 10 points. The blue wave, old white people leading the No Kings March. Women saying, bullshit, I marched for women's rights. I'm not going to go out like this. Grassroots activism. You're seeing churches come together to protect immigrants. Now you're seeing some spine in Democratic mayors, Pritzker and other, right? The Minneapolis police arresting ICE for unlawful behavior, right? You're seeing the people push Democrats to fight back. You're seeing boycotts happen. So what gives me hope is not necessarily top down, Glenn. It's grassroots. It's the people mobilizing in real time with the good news today, but people thought was unthinkable. Miami, Eileen Higgins, what? So that's my good news, Glenn. How about you?
So it feels like maybe you think we're heading in the right direction as we approach the midterms. And I don't remember if we were talking about this before or after we signed on, but I think as long as we have free and fair elections, if we have them, and if
Before.
there's a lot of heavy lifting in that calculation, right? If we have free and fair elections, I think it's going to be a bloodbath, a blue wave like we have not seen before, if recent elections are any indication, and Miami today is any indication. So do you think and I'm counting on the imbecility, the idiocy, and the incompetence of Donald Trump and everybody he has surrounded himself with. If they were all smarter, they got some smart ones in there, some crafty ones, some evil ones. But if they were all smarter, they could probably accomplish a whole lot more than they are. So, I think it's a combination of the people rising up, and we have been, and the imbecility of Trump and company. I think I think we're on a better trajectory right now than we were perhaps 4, 5, 6 months ago. How about you?
So I'm not a cynic. I am not apathetic. I have to be hopeful for the sake of my children, but I'm also a pragmatist. I was talking to some folks, and in the past year, Glenn, and you know this as a former prosecutor, and I've talked to people in government, I've talked to people in law, I've talked to people also economists, I've talked to people who are doctors. They have all told me the damage that has been done is generational. Generational damage has already been done, folks. The fear is whether or not it's a multi-generational. So I think we have to brace ourselves. Like the damage is done. This is going to be a long walk. There's no going to be like a snap of the fingers in 2026 or 2028. This is going to be a generational fight to, I think, a reform. I think people are done with restoration. You need a fighter and a reformer. Will the Democrats find them? Let's see. It's still a let's see situation because you have the old guard. And I'm not using old as a pejorative. The old way of thinking now fighting with the new way of thinking. I want to remind you all, they threw everything, the Democrats threw everything at Zohran Mamdani. Trump embraced Mamdani before Chuck Schumer did, folks. So these fights are happening. We're trending towards the right direction. When it comes to Trump and bringing him back full circle, this is my fear, Glenn. You know, when I said it in 2019, I tweeted it, and I said it 2 or 3 times. He's not going to leave peacefully. A lot of the establishment folks, I'm not using that as a pejorative, a lot of the professionals, they had a failure of imagination and they mocked me. And I said, you aren't paying attention to what he is and what this movement is. He's not going to leave peacefully. We saw the January 6th violent insurrection. I pay attention to him, Glenn. In October, last October, he said before the election, I will unleash the National Guard against the enemy of the people. Remember that?
Yeah.
And that was the quote I kept bringing up. The National Guard, the military, ICE has been unleashed against the people. Who said the enemy of the people? Hitler. He quotes Hitler a lot. Since the summer, Stephen Miller has used this term, insurrection. Recently, he used the term Insurrection Act. Pam Bondi, his attorney general, repeated Insurrection Act. Last month, when Donald Trump, about a month and a half ago, when Donald Trump was asked, will you invoke the Insurrection Act? He didn't say no, Glenn. So my fear is this New York sewer rat who's cornered does not care about anyone or anything. He will chew through everything. And my fear is, going back to your if that we were actually talking about before we went live, is if we have free and fair elections, then I think we might be going to a good path. But I do think, Glenn, we have to prepare people. That's an if. And the fact that they're openly musing about using the Insurrection Act, my fear has always been this dude, if he realizes he's dying and losing physically and figuratively, he will create a rack stack fire moment. They've tried 3 times in the summer. They tried it in LA, they tried it with Charlie Kirk, and they tried it with the Afghan National. 3 rack stack fire moments that all failed, thank God. Each time Stephen Miller came out, insurrection, insurrection, insurrection. There was no insurrection. My fear is they will create a rack stack fire moment to invoke the Insurrection Act and go for martial law. And I think we have to have our eyes wide open for that, Glenn. But your take, you're the former prosecutor. You tell me.
Well, you know what? I can just say ditto to that, because from the moment he first deployed troops in LA, I have been saying what he's going to do is create so much chaos in so many American cities that he will then say, you know what? I'm concerned that the midterms are not going to be safe and they're not going to be free and people are going to interfere with them. So what I'm going to have to do is invoke the Insurrection Act, declare some form of martial law, and we're just going to postpone the midterms, which means he will cancel the midterms. But here's what he did not count on. The federal judges, left, right, and center, have been kicking his ass up and down from coast to coast. And these are Reagan appointed judges, George H.W. Bush appointed judges, George W. Bush appointed judges, they're Clinton, they're Obama, they're Biden, and they're Trump appointed judges kicking his ass. And he thought he was just going to waltz the military, whether federalized National Guards or federal troops proper, into all of the American cities and nobody was going to push back. Well, fuck you, sport, because
right.
we're pushing back. The courts are pushing back. Now, I always have to finish the thought with, but the Supreme Court, because we're always saying, but what will the Supreme Court do? And I've lost all confidence in the what I call now the radical right wing 6 justice majority of the Supreme Court. They have repeatedly walked away from the express text of the Constitution. For gosh sakes, the take care clause says the president must take care to faithfully execute the laws of the country. How do you look at that express text and say, oh, that means he can violate all of the laws of our nation, victimize wide swaths of the American population, and he can do it with complete immunity from prosecution? That is the direct opposite of the take care clause obligation of a president. It's the direct opposite of the impeachment judgment clause, which says he can be impeached in the House. He can be convicted and removed by the Senate, and he can still be prosecuted for the same conduct. Come on now. So I am always saying, but the Supreme Court, and they are not honest brokers of the law or the language of the Constitution. And that is, if we survive this, and I believe we will, we've got to wrestle that problem to the ground. Those are the only 9 people of the 1.2 million federal government employees who operate in an ethics-free zone. No enforceable ethical code of conduct for these people. They can take all the free RVs and home renovations for their moms and lavish trips and accommodations, in-kind contributions from Republican billionaire oligarchs, and then they can break federal law by declining to put any of it on their federal financial disclosure forms, and we're not going to do shit about it? Come on now.
I think, I appreciate your impassioned commentary right now. I think the messenger is important, right? Because I am a unfrozen caveman lawyer who hasn't practiced in 14 years, but you are a respected former prosecutor, federal prosecutor, JAG officer, right? And I think when people like you who have tried their best, to maintain a fidelity towards these institutions, to promote these institutions, to clean it out, right, to reform it. When you have reached your wits' end, and when you are using this type of language for the first time and saying, "Folks, I think the Supreme Court is corrupt and broken. I think these 6 Supreme Court justices aren't justices. I don't think they have loyalty to the Constitution. I think they have loyalty and fidelity to their right-wing billionaires and their extremist authoritarian agenda." People listen, Glenn, because I think it's important. I think, like just this past week, if you just take it just this past week, talking about these judges, that was a Trump appointed district court judge in Texas who wrote a fantastic slapdown opinion using the exact quotes from, Abbott and everyone else, where literally, folks, Trump appointed judge said, this is racial gerrymandering. Nope, got to strike it down. And then the Supreme Court comes in and goes, let's just massage the truth a bit, because that's what they can do, like Play-Doh, right? We want this end. So how can we navigate intellectually this end? Let's just do it in the most half-assed, sloppy way possible. You know what? We told President Biden, you know what? You don't have the authority as the president to forgive student loans. That we have to have separation of church, a separation of the branches, and the Congress is there. But Donald Trump, you go ahead and fire whoever you want in these independent agencies and you politicize it. It's so naked. It's so shameless. You practice law far longer than I did. I practiced for only a couple of years, but we're still licensed attorneys. Still have my license, folks. Doesn't it infuriate you, Glenn, what our teachers taught us when we were in law school, what our colleagues taught us, right? The people who are ethical and decent and good, and the fact that we're seeing the highest court in the land just be so brazenly hackish and take literally a hatchet to the Constitution for their own political agenda. It really very few things anger me. This angers me.
Yeah. So we have to increase the number of Supreme Court justices. I wish Biden
Absolutely.
had an appetite for that while he was in office to at least try it. We have to have an enforceable code of ethics that binds the Supreme Court justices. And let's see the other co-equal branches of government prod themselves into wakefulness. Congress, for God's sakes, can conduct impeachment inquiries of guys like Thomas and Sammy the Bull Alito, and the executive branch through the Department of Justice actually can enforce the law against Supreme Court justices who violated financial disclosure laws to start. We have to go back to checks and balances, even though I know the Supreme Court is trying its nefarious best to walk checks and balances deep into the woods and shoot it dead. We can't let them. And they're going to keep trying, but that's why, we got to keep rising up.
I appreciate you saying that, and I share your. Listen, folks, I know this might piss some people off, but I've been saying this for a while. Joe Biden, in the final month of his presidency, when he was lame duck, that's when he came out with the reforms that Glenn mentioned. But he didn't mention the most important one. And I think it's time, Glenn. If you message, bill it, they will come. You have to lead. You have to stand for something. You have to message. So I'll give you an example. Mamdani messaged on affordability. Nah, people don't care. Oh, it seems that people do care. I always tell people I'm a writer first. So I'm in the inshallah business. I'm in the imagination business. So my job as a writer is to create, if you will, the mental blueprint. And then everyone else's job is to then create the actual building, right? But you have to imagine and message and then, if you will, announce the story of being the Supreme Court is corrupt, folks. There's a better way. We have to hold them accountable. You can expand the court. You can enforce some ethics. You can enforce the laws that are on the book. Because in the absence, Glenn, of any accountability of this court, they have repeatedly shown us they don't give a shit. Like, I want to remind people real quick, just because it's such an important, I think you should, if someone says, I don't vote, I would tell them, top of mind, you should vote for the Supreme Court. If that's your only issue, you should vote for the Supreme Court, right? Because Samuel Alito's wife didn't just fly one pro January 6th insurrection flag, folks. She flew two at two different properties. Clarence Thomas's wife sent multiple supportive text messages of the insurrection to Mark Meadows, who was the chief of staff as it happened. And you're telling me that these two folks are still in the Supreme Court and they have no fear of any accountability. So the water is warm, Glenn. What I'm saying is the water is warm, and I want a Democrat in 2028 to step up and actually, as one of their 15, 20 points, literally, I want them to champion accountability, and I want them to say, I want the expansion of the Supreme Court. And I believe, Glenn, this is my prediction. Since I've predicted a lot, let me predict this. If I'm wrong, I'll eat halal crow. Whoever messages this consistently, by the time 28 comes around, Glenn, I think this will be a winning message. I think the majority of people will be like, we're done with the Supreme Court. Let's expand it. And remember FDR. FDR threatened them. He said, all right, mother effers, you don't want the New Deal? I'm going to expand. And what do, Glenn? They bent the knee to FDR. They're like, okay.
And let's not forget, in our nation's history, we've had a Supreme Court with as few as 5 justices. We've had a Supreme Court with as many as 10 justices. 9 is not a magic number. The federal trial court judges have been increased over time to norm for the increase in the population and the increased caseloads. Federal Circuit Courts of Appeal judges have been raised to norm for the population and for the expanding caseloads. It only makes sense to do the same for the Supreme Court. And so, as a little footnote to what you said about Alito, because he is such a little punk in my estimation. And when his wife was flying the insurrection flags, Alito couldn't sell her out quickly enough. Oh, that was my wife. That was my wife who did that. And I thought to myself, isn't it ironic that Justice Samuel Alito doesn't even have autonomy over his own flagpole?
I love it.
But I have to give Fugel Sang credit for that line. I can't spit it out. I'm no comedian without attributing it where it belongs. That was the great John
Like the
Fugelsang.
ethics. That was, I think I could tell you're like, oh, I can't. I got to give it to Fugelsang. But
Yeah.
you know what? I think why it's so important is to mock them because they're so insecure. They're so fragile. And did you follow this, Glenn? Because these leaks are coming from inside. The leaks against Hexet, they're coming from inside. The leaks against Kash Patel are coming from FBI agents, folks. They call them the Make-A-Wish candidate. And did you hear that story? That story that was leaked about Kash Patel was designed for maximum humiliation because these people pretend. I call them cosplay crusaders. They pretend to be alpha men, but they're scared, fragile boys. So the story that came out about Kash Patel, the flagpole story, reminded me, is Kash Patel, who has no experience in the FBI or law enforcement, wanted to appear as a tough FBI guy. So before the televised press conference after the Charlie Kirk murder, he stayed on the jet until someone gave him an FBI jacket with the FBI on the side, and they could only find him a medium woman's jacket. Now,
Yep.
there's nothing wrong. I wear a medium woman jacket. If
Yeah.
I'm cold, I don't give a shit. But the reason why that detail was so important, and the FBI leaked it out, is because they know how fragile these men are, how insecure they are, Glenn, is that to mock these people, it's important to mock them. They're weak men hiding behind power. And I think it's more and more important for the rest of us to say, just like we did to a bully when we were bullied as kids. Oh, the bully's actually weak and fragile, and he hides behind this bravado. Once you step up to the bully, we find out that the bully usually has, and you're a boxer, the weakest chin, the weakest knees, and the weakest cankles.
Yeah. Yeah. No, these are not strong human beings. They would all crumble under one punch. Not that we get to punch them literally, only figuratively. But all right, Wash, I am so thrilled that you spent this evening with us. We didn't get to any legal issues as we usually do, so we're going to double up tomorrow night at tomorrow night's community meeting on the legal issues. Please click over to the left hook with Wajahat Ali. You won't be disappointed. I don't have to sell him to you. He just sold himself for the past 45 minutes that we've been on. So thank you, my friend. Keep punching, keep punching, keep punching.
No, thank you, and sorry you got me excited. It's always easy and fluid and natural when we talk, and so I didn't even realize the time. So I hope I didn't overtalk and overstay my welcome with your community.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you, friends. I'll see you all at tomorrow night's community meeting. Have a good night, Waj.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, man.